Thank you everyone so much for joining today. We are here to talk about pair programming and some of the secrets that you can do to make it more successful. A little bit of housekeeping rules off the bat. Um, the chat functionality is not enabled and you all are muted by default. If you have questions, please add them into the Q&A. Just to keep logistics a little smoother, we won't be answering the questions during the presentation, but we have dedicated time at the end to answer all of them. So as you have questions come up at any time, toss them into the Q&A. We are recording the session, so you'll receive this at the end. And we can dive into it, who we are.
So Crafted is a Denver-based product development consultancy. We specialize in building new and modernizing existing technology. We also work with multiple cloud providers such as Azure, Google Cloud. We are also AWS partner. And not only we develop, we also help organizations enable best practices on their teams. And those practices can include hands-on training on agile development, lean product management, and also user-centered design. We worked with multiple organizations, a variety of organizations, from small startups to large corporate enterprises. And at the core of our values is balanced teams. And by balanced teams, we mean collaborative sessions between three disciplines: product management, software development, and design. We like to not isolate each discipline, but to have all the three disciplines work together collaboratively. And that's what Crafted is.
Quick shout out also, you'll see here in the front is my dog. Her name is Pojo, or her full name, plain old Java object. While we go through this, I'm just going to launch a couple of other polls in the background. Feel free to answer as we go. Introductions for who we are, your amazing panelists today. My name's Kappy Hausfeld. I'm a senior software engineer. I've been writing code for about a decade, and I've been a consultant for just about half that, and started pair programming my very first year of writing code. So it's something I am very passionate about.
Thanks, Kappy. And my name is Ksenia Kudelic. I've been writing software for about 3 years, and I've been pair programming for about 2 of them. I previously had a career in energy sector, but I love writing software, doing all the Colorado things such as skiing and hiking and all of that fun stuff. And then in the free time, I like to study brain and happiness. All right,
Alrighty,
so go ahead,
sorry,
Kappy.
Ksenia.
Yep, you good. Yeah, let's talk about what pair programming is. And before we talk about what it is, let's talk about what it is not. Next slide. So pair programming is not writing software. It's not writing software at the same time, like typing at the same time, and it's also not a code review. Pair programming is a methodology that is a part of extreme programming. It's a project management methodology that targets speed and simplicity to write really good software with short development cycles. And pair programming is basically a methodology when two people work together in the real time and build software. But like I said, it's not two people, hands on the keyboard at the same time. There are 2 roles in pair programming. One is a driver, one is a navigator. And here you can see my favorite episode from The Office, where Dwight is a navigator, navigating Michael into the river.
All right. Now that you've had the bit of the overview, we can talk through some of the different styles of pairing. So as you can see here, these are 2 people pairing. The man is on this larger screen and the woman's on the smaller laptop. Even though they're not working on the exact same machine, I would still call this pair programming. Maybe she's doing research while they write the code together on the larger screen. This is another style of pair programming. It's one shared screen, but each engineer has access to the keyboard themselves, in person, sitting physically close to next to one another. This is also my favorite type of pair programming. This is two screens, two keyboards, two mice sitting in close proximity to each other, but it is actually the same physical machine. This allows that everyone has equal access to the computer. You can set up the chair the way that you like, feel more comfortable, but you're still working on the same machine. This might be what most of us are used to nowadays. This would be some virtual pair programming. You might use different meeting tools, different software, not sitting in close proximity to your pair, but still pairing. And you can pair like this. I'm not here to judge. Now that you've had the brief overview of what pairing is, let's tell you a little bit of why it's important.
All right, so let's talk about the business value of pair programming first. The first reason we like to talk about is the lottery count or bus count, but in our case, lottery count. When somebody wins the lottery and they don't want to be a software engineer anymore, what does the rest of the team do? So when the team member leaves, we have, with pair programming, we have the ability to pick up the work seamlessly because every developer on the team is very much familiar with a little bit of the code with the code base, a little bit of everywhere. Um, it's a skill that every developer should possess nowadays. And we like to talk about pair programming not as a dogma where everybody should do it 100% of the time every day. This is a really nice tool in the toolbox. So whenever the team needs to implement this methodology, developers can come together and share context, share experience, and pair program together. So it definitely helps out with onboarding of the new members to the team. Sometimes it can take between 1 to 3, 4, on larger corporations, even 6 months to onboard a new member, get familiar with the code base. And sometimes, monolithic code bases could be really, really large and in size. So with pair programming and constant rotation, it gives developers the ability to see, again, different parts of code base and onboard very quickly. So it does prepare the team for changes, whether those changes are internal or external, being, team sizes grow and shrink. And then also sometimes the strategy of the business changes. And for example, developers need to develop a lot of new features or deprecate old features. So once again, this familiarity, oh my gosh, I can't speak anymore. The fact that everybody is familiar with the code base really, really helps. We will talk about the speed development in a couple of slides. There is a notion that pair programming slows down the development. Cappy will touch on that. It really helps teams overall in the long term to develop faster. And of course, two heads is always better than one. With pair programming, you produce higher quality code with a lot fewer defects.
Not only is pair programming beneficial to your business, it is also beneficial for you as an individual contributor. As Ksenia mentioned before, it reduces knowledge silos, i.e. reducing the lottery count. And it is also a way for you as a new joiner, when you join a team, you are immediately productive. You're working with someone from day one. There's no kind of being left in your own vacuum, trying to figure out an entirely new code base, figure out how a team is working. If you start pairing on your very first day, you're already adding value. One of my favorite things about pair programming is what I like to call the continuous code review. I see we have a fair amount of software engineers on the call. I'm not sure if you all have ever been in this situation. You're working on something, you get stuck, You bang your head against a wall for a couple of hours. You finally decide to ask for some help. You pull in another engineer, spend 45 minutes showing them the problem, talking them through what you've already tried, what hasn't worked. And then finally, after all of this, you have the two brains together working to solve your problem. When you're pair programming, you already have that second brain with you from the beginning to help you solve the problem. So it's not just, you know, this wasted time of pulling someone in, but you have someone with you there from the beginning. Another wonderful thing about pair programming is this sense of team camaraderie. There's a lot less code blame that goes on when you're always working on a piece of code with someone else. What is my code is now our shared code. Um, I also have one more poll I'm going to launch. Let me just do that in the background. Um, Another benefit of pair programming is growing yourself as an engineer or whatever your discipline is. I think there's a very common misconception that pair programming is only beneficial for juniors, and I'd like to dispel that notion. Um, so it is very beneficial for juniors. Myself, starting pair programming within my first year, not only learned how to become a better engineer, but I learned best practices from the very start. Also, as an intermediate engineer, you really solidify what you know. How often have you tried to explain a concept to someone else only to realize you don't know it quite as well as you thought you did? And for seniors especially, I think pairing is a great tool to really grow your mentorship skills, grow your soft skills, transition into leadership roles. And I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've paired with someone more junior and learned a new hotkey, learned something new about a language that I didn't know. Every time I pair, I truly am learning something new. If you don't believe me, believe the data. There's a couple of studies out there that have tried to kind of quantify the value of pair programming. I would say this is the most popular one. It's a bit old from 2000, but it's still very relevant in my opinion. So, as Ksenia mentioned before, a common argument against pair programming is that it is a bit slower. This study did find in pure lines of code shipped, it's about 15% slower. But they also found much higher quality code, fewer defects, and my favorite, engineers just found it more fun.
But we also have to talk about some challenges of pair programming as well. Um, Sometimes it can be daunting to be at the computer for a very long period of time and also actively pair programming with someone. So it takes about 2 sprints, 1 to 2 sprints to actually get used to the amount of time you talk, and also the amount of time you actively have to communicate with someone. So ramp up period can be challenging for teams, and if people at first think that it's really really hard, we also always recommend our clients or our coworkers to get used to it and just wait, give it a little break, give yourself a little break and wait for a sprint or two. It really gets better. Um, so like I said, it can be challenging to be on the computer for extended period of time with someone, and different dimensions of people come out, different characters. So sometimes it can be challenging and emotionally challenging to again do so for extended periods of time. Communication styles can be different. Patience patience level could be different as well. Distractions, and with that, we always recommend to define the relationship. When I was at Turing, we used this tool DTR, where it helps. And then also, you really build resiliency and start enjoying it. Like once the getting used to period has passed, then you actually start enjoying doing it and enjoying seeing other perspectives and coding together. So yeah, no, like I said, it's not just all difficult and you have to put up with it, it really just takes a little bit of time. It helps you build empathy. You really start to understand people better, understand your coworkers better. And these are the soft skills that you can develop in the workplace that not only have to be implemented in the workplace, you can also take them outside in life. Really, empathy is a great tool nowadays. Um, and attitude is everything. So if you really approach this as a tool or a skill you want to learn, and a tool you want to have in your toolbox, and a tool you want your team to possess, then you will have fun. And like I said, in a sprint or two, you'll relax and enjoy the process.
I'd love to share just a little anecdote too, with what Ksenia is saying. When I first started pairing, it was full-time 100% pair programming. And I remember in the evenings, I would go home and put in headphones, not playing any music, but just because I was so exhausted from my first week of pairing that I didn't want to talk to anyone. So this really goes along with this too of, give it some time. You will be tired when it first starts, but it does go away. As someone who's been doing this for multiple years, I promise it gets less exhausting. All right. And my favorite part of our presentation here is how do you actually start pairing on your team? An easy introduction to start pairing is to really just kind of start it as ad hoc. Sometimes the word pairing itself carries some baggage with it. So what you can do is just ask people, hey, are you free? Do you mind hopping in on this call real quick? Can you help me with this? Um, One thing I would recommend is don't try your first pairing experience on the most complicated problem that you have to solve. Pairing is already a new skill that you'll be ramping up, so try and start with something that's a little bit easier, a little bit more straightforward, and then you can focus more on the pairing experience itself. Also try and keep it short for your first time. An entire day of pairing, especially if pairing is a new skill to both of you, try and keep it to an hour, keep it to a morning, one ticket, see how it goes. And also this one-on-one interaction, two people in a Zoom call together or two people sitting right next to each other can often be intimidating. Try pulling in a few people, do three people, see how that goes. Um, it's a nicer way to just slowly work your way up to pairing. One thing that we've actually done here at Crafted is we've done a full-time immersive pairing experiment. So this is something that we did very grassroots. I would not recommend starting this as something top-down, mandated on your teams. But what we did was this kind of intensive pairing experience where we asked everyone to come at this as let's start pairing every day for a certain amount of time. As Ksenia mentioned before, we like to recommend, if you have 2-week sprints, try it for 1 or 2 sprints. 2 being the best, you can kind of get into this nice rhythm, build up your skill set, build up your expertise. Pairing is a skill that really you get better with over time. And the most important thing, if you want to try this heads down immersive pairing thing, is lots and lots of retrospectives. Have them at least once a week, maybe once every sprint that's specifically about the pairing experience. One of my favorite styles of retros for this specifically is a start, stop, continue. Talk about the different aspects of how often are we switching pairs? Is this working for us? Pairing is going to be different on every single team. There's not one, magic bullet for everything. So figure out what works best for your team. And in Crafted's example, we did this for about a month. Everyone really leveled up on their pairing skills. And then afterwards, as Ksenia's mentioned, this is a tool in our toolbox that we know how to use. Many people stuck with it. Some folks don't do it quite as often, but it's something we know how to do. Um, and this picture here is actually from one of my past clients. It's on their website, and this is our team pre-COVID. Um, this is all of us sitting at our pairing stations right next to each other doing our full-time pair programming. I think I was sick this day and I'm not in the photo, but you get the idea. Some of the logistics for starting pairing is definitely BYOK. bring your own keyboard. There is nothing more exhausting or frustrating than just sitting on a call and watching someone else write code. What you really want to do is have equal access to the screen. So this can either be if you're an in-person company, setting up what we call pairing stations, like the photos from before, either two monitors or one monitor but multiple keyboards. You want to make it as easy as possible for people to just kind of sit down, plug and play, and get started with pairing. If you're virtual, also please try out some different pairing tools, see what works best for you. We'll have another slide on some recommendations coming up. And ease the barriers to entry. Again, if you're in person, pairing is very loud. I think we might have some ex-pivots in the audience. I once worked at a company called Pivotal that was very much into pair programming. And when you would go to the engineering floor, it was a loud place to be. So be cognizant that when you do pair programming, it's going to be loud. Make sure it's in a place where you're not going to annoy your neighbors. As far as software goes, there are a lot of different tools out there to kind of ease pairing and make it more intuitive. One is make sure you give credit. We all like to see our names on the work that we've done. So there, for tools like Jira, there are ways to configure another field, make sure that you have your pair's name on there as well. At the very least, comment your pair's name on the ticket itself, keep track of it that way. There are also different tools for when you do git commits in different version control system where you can actually attribute your pair and put them on that commit. And then everyone can get those nice little green squares on GitHub and show that you've been doing your work. And lots of other tools for deciding how often you want to rotate. This is my favorite. This is called parrot.io. There's nothing worse than the politics of deciding who you want to pair to or pair with. So if you can outsource that to something as impartial as Parrot, it's lovely. And again, we'll have more slides at the end of this sharing out all of these resources. As I promised, here are some of my favorite pairing tools. So as you can see, Teams and Zoom are lower on this chart. They are great meeting softwares. I'm sure everyone here on this call has used them before. The only downside is they are not fantastic for actually doing pairing. There's just quite a lot of clicks that you need to do to either like annotate on someone's screen or share remote control access. Great for meeting tools, not so great for pairing. If we look at the other end of the graph, Tuple is, I'd say, by far the best pairing software. The only downside is that it is a paid pairing software. I think you can do a 1-month free trial. So, this would be something, talk to your company, talk to your managers, see if this is something you'd like to invest in. Otherwise, Pop is probably what I've used the most. It is a free software, but along with that, it does tend to have a few more bugs. Slack huddles are great, just not my favorite. And most big name IDEs at this point have some sort of Google Docs like interactive coding environment where you can see each other's cursors. The only downside is there's usually not audio and video. So if you do something like code with me, you're probably going to want to have a Teams or a Zoom running at the same time to, hear the voice, see the audio. That covers the pairing software. As you can see, Ksenia and I both have our webcams on. Webcams are something that are really useful when you're pairing to just build that empathy with your pair. We've talked about the BYOK, and you can also see with my goofy helicopter pilot headset with boom mic right here. Headphones are really wonderful when you're pairing. There's nothing more exhausting than having a pair with bad quality audio to just give you a headache for 8 hours a day.
Yeah, so let's talk about how to make pairing pleasant. So before you hop on the call with your pair, prepare. Bring your best attitude. Just take a breath, relax. It's gonna be okay. This is fun. If you can make it fun. So, like Cappy mentioned, make sure your tech is working. Keep your camera on. Make sure that the camera is working. Your headphones are charged. I'm really guilty of having the battery run out of all of my devices. my phone, my headphones, but don't do what I do. Definitely charge your headset. Like I mentioned, before DTR defined the relationship, when I was at Turing, we had a really lovely template for when we had pairing on, one-on-one, or when there were teams with multiple participants. We were defining working hours. We were outlining expectations as to, somebody has families, they have to pick up kids earlier. That's okay too, as long as you communicate and you just don't drop off the call in the middle of, solving a problem and not communicating to your pair as to what's going on. And then sharing context. So once you hop on on the call with your pair, instead of just jumping in to the problem right away, take a second, take a look at what's going on, and then share context with your pair. Maybe they haven't been looking at this problem for a while. Sometimes I come in and open my computer and I don't even remember what we were working on yesterday because there can be so many things. So give it a little grace. Um, so during pairing, think out loud. There is really a big difference between pairing with someone in complete silence and just scrolling through the code versus just sharing out loud as to what you're thinking, what your thought process is. I don't remember, I mean, I only remember like a handful of times when I was pairing with someone and we had the same idea on solutions for the problem. As many engineers there are, you will think of as many solutions. Pace, don't rush. Also, the development pace can be different, not just because somebody's more junior, senior, but also just different thinking styles. Some people just, can move really quickly. Some people just have to really think about it. It doesn't mean that there's, it's slower or it's a slower process. It just means that they have to, think and process it for a little bit longer. So yeah, just be aware of pace, and then scrolling fits really, really well here. Um, uh, Sometimes it can make you feel nauseous when somebody just scrolls up and down. You can't really read, you can't really do anything, and it's quite distracting. So just once again, just slow down. There's no reason to rush. Even though there will be a little bit of a slowdown in while pairing, in the long run, it's going to help the team, and the code. The code is going to be better. Mouse grab is something that I'm guilty, and I think Cappy, you have a fun story about this as well. Um, yeah, we already discussed roles of driver and navigator. If you're pairing and somebody is a navigator, just make sure that you are letting the driver type. There's no reason to just you know grab onto the mouse and start typing. The whole point is that you are able to communicate what you're thinking, and this is not the skill that comes naturally to a lot of people. So I think that pairing really helped me be able to convey the ideas that I have. So it doesn't only help my pair to understand what I'm thinking, it also helps me to make sure that I understand the problem correctly. Yeah, so like I said, let go. There's no reason to just get worked up about it. Have a little bit of fun, enjoy it. Uh, it actually is a lot of fun once you just relax and let it go. Etiquette, make sure you communicate when you need to take breaks. That's totally okay. We're all people. But you see there's a little picture here at the bottom right. This is not really pleasant when somebody's chewing. Your pair is probably hungry too if you've been pairing for hours. Um, sometimes it's good to use either like tools like Pomodoro tool to track your time and just make those breaks automatic. But if you if you're okay with taking breaks, just say, hey, like let's take a 5, let's take a 10, hydrate and eat whatever, and then come back with in full force and effect. And then after you paired, like Kathy mentioned, make sure that you do retro. You probably will retro a lot in the first couple of weeks. This will decrease with time because, again, the pressure will kind of disperse and disappear. And yeah, just wanna emphasize one more time that it is important to give it a couple of weeks. Once you productively struggle for a few weeks, it will become enjoyable. I
And
think
the
we,
story that
oh,
oh
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
story that you alluded to, Ksenia, I think it was probably my third year of pairing. I was pairing with someone a little bit more new to pairing, and I am so thankful. In the middle of our pairing session, she spoke up and told me that I was grabbing for control too often and gave me this quick, direct feedback. And we stopped and we talked about it. And we decided the best step forward was I needed to unplug my keyboard. And I have to say, that was one of my favorite pairing experiences. And so, just once again, highly, highly recommend speak out, talk with your pair. It's a conversation, have these mini feedback sessions, and figure out what works best for you.
Thanks, Gappy. I think a lot of us have those stories. I'm just gonna add one more thing that I think I forgot to mention is when while pairing, it's recommended to keep your cameras on just for team morale and whatnot. But it also is recommended to hide your self view. You really are less distracted and you waste a lot less energy on looking at yourself. And then one last thing is that I'm going to mention. It actually has to do with voice. So last year, I attended a voice clinic here in Colorado, and the doctor mentioned that a lot of his clients are actually software engineers, surprisingly. And the reason being is because we tend to, when we wear headphones, because of the voice isolation or sound isolation, we tend to speak louder, sometimes scream at the screen. What I want to say is there's no reason. Headphones that are made nowadays have really good sound quality. So yeah, just stay hydrated, don't yell, and have a little bit of fun. Thanks, Gappy.
Um, and so as much as we love pairing, pairing is something or not something you need to do all of the time. Pairing does not work well when you're researching something or even prototyping, proof of concepting. Um, there is nothing worse than two people trying to read an article together. So it's all good. Please don't try to do that. Also, don't take your pair along for your one-on-one with your manager. We also don't recommend that. As Ksenia mentioned before, eating's not the best time to pair. If you have different schedules, you're in different time zones, let your pair know, put yourself on mute. There's ways to get around it, but try not to chew in your pair's ear. And again, as much as we love pairing, it's not something that you need to do 100% of the time, 8 hours a day for the rest of your life. Um, if you saw in the pairing assignment screenshot from a couple of slides ago, if you have an odd number of teammates, if someone's out of office for the day, we call these solo days, and they're wonderful. It's really a good time to take a break from pairing too. And not everyone is going to love doing pairing all of the time. So see what works best for you, what works best for your team, and iterate on it from there. Okay, I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the presentation, so bear with me. We do have an interactive part to this presentation. Um, I will ask everyone in attendance to participate. If you have stepped away from your computer, we're just going to move you into a breakout room though. It will require folks unmuting. You don't have to turn on your video if you don't want to, but it'll also be a great way to meet someone else. Um, Whoever's first name comes first in the alphabet, you are now going to be the driver. So you will be the one holding the mouse. You will be the one actually drawing on the Jamboard. The other pair in your breakout room, you're going to be the navigator. So think of an animal. Don't tell your pair. and instruct them how to draw this animal on the Jamboard without explicitly telling them what the animal is.
So now that most of us have drawn an animal, or maybe something that resembles an animal, we're going to switch roles, and somebody who was the driver becomes a navigator and vice versa. And now we're going to put some clothes on an animal. So you can't really name as to what clothing article it is, but you have to describe it, whether it's the color or the shape and whatnot. If somebody, had a chance to draw an animal or put some clothes on it, can you share how did it go? What challenges did you run into? What was difficult? What was easy? Um, can you please maybe either raise, I don't know if we can still raise hands, but maybe um,
Perfect. Garrett, let me unmute you. I saw you with your hand up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah,
So yeah, I think that it was the thing I found easiest. It was super easy to like connect with somebody else and like just jump into it. I think the thing that was most difficult was to actually stay in line with what they were doing. I think it was easy to like get ahead of that person and say, you know, I was already starting to talk without saying pants to starting to go to the pants before they were even finished with drawing the not named shirt. So that part was hard. And yeah, it was really surprising to like be able to work so comfortably with somebody else on that.
thank you. Honestly, I think that's really reflective of pairing too. One, it's really fun to be able to connect with others. And then two, pace is something that's really hard and it's going to be different for every person that you pair with. So I totally know that feeling of like you think you know where someone's going and you kind of just want to get there. Thank you. Cynthia, I think you had your hand up next.
The easiest was remaining creative when the instructions weren't followed exactly just because of how we drew our animal. And what was most difficult was having to revert to more basic instructions because there may be differences due to geographical location on what trends we're familiar with. That's it.
That's so interesting. I love that. Thank you. And again, yeah, pairing with people from different backgrounds, from different cultures, there's always going to be differences in the way that you think, the way that you describe things. That's a really good insight. Ben, also your hand is up.
Hi, yeah. So I think both of us were programmers and had done a decent amount of pair programming in the past. And instead of doing um imperative like instructions of exactly how to do the thing, how to draw the thing, we were pretty declarative and we're like, draw a quadruped with a really long neck. And it was really easy.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's usually one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we get from this is that it's difficult to know how much detail to give in your instructions. And I also think that's very indicative of pairing too, of it depends on does your pair know what this animal is? How familiar is your pair with this programming language? Do you need to help them write the syntax, or are you just talking about, write a for loop and start going? So that's also something that, really correlates to pairing. Any other thoughts? Martin, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that we had was the balance between like being overly prescriptive versus like having allowing the person that was drawing to have a little bit of creativity. And I can't remember who said it initially, but also like working ahead. So I thought we were drawing a bear initially. So my mind immediately went to like, okay, let's draw the features of a bear. And that wasn't that wasn't what we were trying to draw. It was more of like a raccoon. So I had to pivot and adjust based off of that when I found out more information. So
Amazing. Yeah. Again, I think that's so perfect of pairing, is learning your other pair's style and being able to adjust and, slow yourself down a little bit and stay with the pace. These were wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Some final thoughts. Oops, my bad. Some final thoughts to sum this up. In the shortest possible sentence that I could describe pair programming, I think it allows you to create higher quality code quickly and to be able to do this forever. As we've mentioned over and over, there might be a little bit of upfront cost in terms of like pure speed, but pairing makes sure that you maintain a constant delivery rate for the life of your team. There's no more knowledge silos. There's no more pieces of code that this one engineer knew and they quit 2 weeks ago and now no one knows how to touch this code. This makes sure that you have the best design in your code, you have the best quality, the fewest bugs, and you can keep going. And if you're curious, Ksenia, me, all of Crafted, like I've said before, we are all very intimately familiar with pair programming. We love it, and we'd be happy to, give any more tips and tricks and help out teams as we go. And any final questions, thoughts, concerns from folks? And again, just raise your hand and we can unmute. Ben and Martin, your hands are still up. If they're new questions, please leave them up.
Cool. We really recommend doing this exercise with your team. If you if you have engineering team, or even if you're an individual contributor, try this Jamboard exercise out with your coworkers. It will really help you kind of exercise without the pressure of having to write code right away. We've done this and loved it.
We've also done this virtually and in person. If your team's an in-person team, grab a Sharpie and a piece of paper, and it's also really fun to do it that way. We actually have a couple of these animals with clothes framed up in our office.
It actually looks like we did get a question if you
Oh,
want.
I'm so sorry. I'm not checking the Q&A. All right, we have someone asking, do you typically bring your pair to all of your meetings? Which ones make sense and which ones don't? This is such a lovely question. Thank you to whoever asked this. My personal preference is yes. Whatever you're doing for that day, minus managerial things like that, your pair should come along. Knowledge silos don't just come from writing code. There are so many, planning meetings, architectural meetings, things like that, that you want to make sure that that context is also shared. I personally love to have some sort of subject matter expert, when you're launching a new feature, something that's highly complicated. But at the same time, then, whoever that subject matter expert is pairing with for the day, they should come along. And so one person might hold all of the context, but your pair will also, rotate and get pieces as well. Just helps reduce your lottery count. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you, Gabby. I think we don't have any more questions, and looks like we will be sending out a link to a recording in the follow-up email. Thank you for asking, Cynthia.
Awesome. If you have any more questions, again, I think we're actually exactly at time. Feel free to stick around if you have any more. We will also send out some of our favorite resources, tips and tricks. And again, feel free, reach out to me and Ksenia on LinkedIn, reach out to Crafted. We both love pairing and are always happy to talk about it.
And if anyone can stick around, it looks like we do have one more question.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. The question that I see in the chat is, I've heard that the more experienced person should be navigating. Do you prefer that method? If so, how do you deal with situations where it takes the driver a while to get it? It can be frustrating. Yeah, that's also a really good question. As mentioned in this, my general take is that the less experienced person should be the person with hands on the keyboard. It's really good to get that muscle memory of really typing with a new language, getting used to it, and the navigator helping guide them along. That being said, if you don't rotate roles often, it is very exhausting. I would recommend rotating as often as possible. There just purely wasn't enough time in this presentation, but there are so many different styles of pair programming. This is called strong pairing, when you have like one person on the keyboard, and the idea is that nothing can be typed unless it goes through someone else's hands. So the navigator comes up with ideas, says it to the driver, and they type it in. It's also very exhausting. My favorite way is called ping pong, and it works well with test-driven development. And so what you do is one person writes a failing test, the next person writes the code to make it pass, and then you switch. And so when you do this style of pairing, I mean, you're changing roles every 10, 15 minutes. So it just kind of depends on who you're pairing with, what your personalities, your experience levels are like. But I would say the more often you change the roles, the less exhausting it's going to be. Hopefully that answers the question as well. Perfect. If you need to go, feel free to drop off. I don't see any more questions. I think that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.